Hey, good evening, Galleon. This is Mayor Tom O'Leary, back for another Monday night live stream. Got a few things I want to talk about tonight, but I'll try to balance my monologue and avoid ranting and get the questions here in just a minute. I did want to talk about a couple of things. First of all, and I catch myself talking more about this each week. I think it's probably a good thing. If there's something good about COVID as it affects city government, it might be that the Zooming of our committee meetings, which I'm kind of getting tired of, but it has been really good for enabling, allowing folks to, general citizens, people who are interested, to attend the committee meetings without attending the committee meetings. So I want to preview what will happen this week. Tomorrow night is Lands and Buildings and Zoning Ordinance Committee. And however, they have a very important item on the agenda, and that's the initial consideration by council of rezoning of a parcel out at Hosford and Portland Way South. We talked a little bit about it a week ago, and there was a planning committee meeting. Again, those aren't covered in this kind of post-newspaper age very well. But essentially, it's the owners of Mill Creek are proposing to put in an assisted living facility. If memory serves me, it'd be for 40 residents and approximately 30 jobs in supporting that assisted living. So it currently has a kind of an odd residential office, odd in the sense that there are not a whole lot of parcels that are residential office. That one happens to be classified as that, and the request and recommendation by Planning Commission was to switch that to allow that assisted living facility. So that'll be Tuesday night. It's really the main course, if you will, of that committee meeting. On Wednesday night, they're working on, at my request, and talking with Dr. Fellner, the chairman of the Economic Development Airport Committee. They've agreed to pull that committee together to talk about 4 different items. One is very procedural and perhaps could have been done in finance, but I really wanted to get it onto the agenda and get this item appropriating a fund that's been on the books. I think it was in 2011, I think was when the money was last used, and it was sitting there when we came into office, and it's they're unused community development block grant funds. There's public hearing. This is a rerun, I think, Matt, but it's public hearing about a week ago. Matt, myself, and a whole bunch of folks from the Elks were there, but the general public, I probably didn't see any reason or any to attend or to object to it. But what this will accomplish is by appropriating the money that's been sitting in the city books, we'll be able to partner with the Elks and get the old Malloy building, the bakery building, whatever you know it by, but the property just to the east of the Elks will get that demolished, and I think their long-term plan, as in 2021, is to level the parking area, pave it, and really have the entrance to the banquet room of the Elks be off this new access on the east side of their building. So it's a pretty cool thing. Relatively, probably takes longer to explain it than you have to think about whether it's a good idea or not. It's been the notion that we needed to get that decaying building taken down, I think, has been bouncing around city government for months now, and this will be a concrete step so that when the Elks gets their contractor in place and gets everything set up to do it, the actual demolition, we'll be in a position to assist them financially. It's about $30,000 of dormant funds, and we expect that to be, I'm not 100% sure, but I'd say it would be close to half the cost of the project of where it is now if you were to drive by, and the back half's been taken off, and bringing that into kind of the desired future state. It's going to be around 60 grand to get it there. So we're playing a portion, paying a portion and playing a role in really eliminating a pretty blighted part of that part of our uptown area. I think that the other three things that we're talking about economic development are interlinked. And so I'll talk first about what needs to be changed in an ordinance the council passed, probably 4 months ago now. And that was the ordinance that set up a loan program for COVID affected businesses. And the way it's set up now, the Port Authority is obliged to pay us back at a certain point. And what I would like to do is have a discussion about whether or not the city couldn't gain more in a less complicated bookkeeping fashion to go ahead and change the language in the ordinance to basically have the money that went to the Port Authority for that purpose be a grant. And so we'll have a discussion about that. I think it's kind of important because that will enable the city and the auditor and the auditor's office staff to be able to use some of the CARES Act funds, some of the money that took quite a while to come down from Columbus. I mean, we're waiting to do the very thing that we ended up doing with our city money to start with, and it just got to the point, at least in the judgment of the mayor and city council, that we needed to make those dollars available, even though we were still waiting for the money to be transferred to Bucyrus, to the courthouse, and then over to here from Columbus. And so we put that in place, did several of those loans, and then the CARES Act legislation at the General Assembly in Columbus passed, and we eventually have our share. What we'd like to be able to do is assign that money out of a special fund that the COVID dollars went into, assign that money to the loan program, which was the original intent. So that's the key part of changing the language in that ordinance. And it doesn't really matter what the number of the ordinance was. It was passed earlier this year, and if you're real concerned about reading the as-is ordinance and what will be discussed on Wednesday, just give a call up here. We can. I probably can't, but somebody in our office will be able to either send it to your phone or to your iPad or your computer, the original of that ordinance. Why that's important is certainly to use the right funds, and their CARES Act, it's eligible to do that. We want to do that for the support of the business community. The other thing that can happen with that is to generate two redevelopment opportunities. One is the redevelopment of the old Eagle Crusher property. I think I've talked in passing about that in the past. We acquired that through a tax foreclosure, and I think the farther you are away from that property, like if you don't live nearby that Parsons Market, Pershing area, or you don't drive by it regularly, you probably are wondering, what is the city, what is the mayor thinking here? I think if you live near there, you realize that has been a major issue in that neighborhood. It represents what I believe is ground that, if redeveloped, would be ideal for a handful or probably two handsful of housing lots. And so that's the objective, and what we'll do on Wednesday is have a brief discussion about how that could be funded and what we think the potential cleanup redevelopment costs will be. So that's item number 3 on that emergency meeting for Wednesday. The fourth item is what I think is a really intriguing, I think it's a live opportunity. I don't think it's just hypothetical, and that is working with the port to acquire the old Wrenchville property. The property's currently under an option. We've been talking with the person who has that option about how that could be placed in. I mean, conceivably it could be placed in the city's hands, but I think for reasons not worth monologuing about, it would likely be best suited to go to the Port Authority. And then if we can acquire that, then there's a real estate developer who has agreed to build 5 homes out there on the old Wrenchville property. So the first step is to get that property under local public ownership, and then begin to negotiate the details with the builder real estate developer. So that's pretty exciting. If I had to guess where those homes would be, they would probably be up near where the old building was, closer to New Winchester than back against what would be the north and east side of 2 parts of Hessenhauer. So I think ultimately, what everyone who's discussed that I've talked to about it, they can see the potential of additional homes that would match in terms of the size of the lots and the subdivision regulations, the kinds of homes in the Hessenhauer subdivision. And so that's a real exciting opportunity. It really is the main reason for some urgency. It'll be nice to get that Elks appropriation put in place, but the main reason to have a discussion about that is to be able to move on this potential project while the property is still under option, rather than going back and starting from that square one. So, I'm not sure what time to tell you, but stay tuned. I think it's posted public. They're going to have it, I believe, before. Help me, Matt. Before the utility committee?
That is the plan.
Okay, so we'll see. Stay tuned. That's Wednesday. The utility committee, which is usually an active council committee, they're still pulling that agenda together. What we'd hoped in this office is that we would have the rate consultants study back on sewer rates. A few weeks ago, we asked council if they wanted the same firm that had done the work on projected water rates to do a similar analysis of the sewer rates. They said, yeah, of course. And so we're waiting for that rate estimating to come out the other end of the computer, if you will. And I don't think that's going to be ready tomorrow night. I do think Wednesday night. I do think there'll be a discussion. We've had a few commercial property owners that have come in and talked with us recently. We've also had some people over the last several months with commercial parking lots that are gravel that have expressed concerns about their stormwater rates. So some people remember about 5 years ago, we began just to inch into the discussion of stormwater, and I'm not sure what happened that interrupted that. I know it wasn't a biblical flood, or it wasn't a pandemic, but it was something that derailed that process. And so we've been aware of those concerns. You're also, once this can of worms open, you're also going to hear people, residents, complaining about their $6 a month charge, and they get no storm sewer service. That doesn't seem fair. Last thing I'll say before I move on to one other topic, because I do want to answer some questions here in just a minute. But it's important to remember, if you didn't know, and if you're listening now, you know it. Out of that stormwater fee, we not only maintain the storm sewers, which includes street sweeping. Come up here sometime and I'll try to explain why. I'm not really sold on it, but it's a practice a lot of communities use, and it's a practice that was established largely by the state auditor that assisted in getting us out of fiscal emergency. But it's also the leaf pickup fund. So while you may not have stormwater, if you're in the city, you probably do have a tree. Oh, never mind, that tree thing we won't talk about tonight. But you probably have a tree, maybe a big one that sheds a lot of leaves, and that service is funded out of that stormwater charge. So that's kind of the way it is. Doesn't have to be that way, but before people get too exercised about their $6 a month and not having a storm sewer, they do get those two key services. You probably don't get your street swept if you don't have a curb or an active storm sewer. So I'll back off a little bit. You get leaf pickup for that. So what is that? 12 sixes, $96, isn't that? Yeah, 96. Yeah, that's not right, is it? No, it's 72. Somebody figure it out. Tell me the mayor can't even do math. It's not a whole lot a year for that service, and I'm not sure other communities or other neighborhoods that have a private leaf pickup generally pay a little bit more than that. So, well, I wish I hadn't exposed my inadequacies at math. I'm usually bragging about how the nuns taught me how to do all this math in my head, and there I go. Sorry, nuns, my fault. One other item before we move on here to questions. I'll go with the good news stuff. My wife said to smile tonight. Good news stuff. We got one more weekend at the Splash Park. Get out there. It'll be shutting down. That's kind of normally, I think all of us that are Ohioans know that we may have a week or so of what do you want to call that? Aboriginal summer, not Indian summer. But in any event, there oftentimes have a week or two of 80s and low 90s in October. And as we have in the past, if we get that sort of hot spell, we'll improvise, and we had great luck with city employees volunteering their time or flexing their time, so we can keep that open. So unless we get some unseasonable but favorable warm weather later on into September or October, this will be the last weekend for the Splash Park. So that's the good news, if there is good news. We'll talk about two things before we get on to questions. One, Kobe Park is not a campground. And I know there were, I think, dozens of comments over that. And they split into the somebody needs to do something. If these people don't have a place to live, then that's a shame, something should happen. And the other, it's not a campground point of view. We can't let people put up tents and turn a park which has great potential. I'd be probably the first or second one to admit it's not living to its potential. But it's never intended to be a tent city, and just not going to put up with it. So I think there's been some direct contact. I had a good conversation with one of our council members today. He'd had some direct contact with some of the people who's made a decision to live out there, but that's just not acceptable. And so we're going to work on how to do two things. One, stop that from happening and find some other place for these people to live. I think the impression was that some of the people, I believe there were 4 people, at least 3 of those 4 were, if you will, transients. So they weren't someone from the Galleon area that was super down on their luck and ended up out there. They're people coming through, and while I don't want to be uncompassionate, we're just not going to put up with that. Kobe Park needs to be turned into a dog park, and so I'll be hounding Councilman Ivy to focus on that as a primary focus, and I think you do small things well, and you also try to tackle big things, but I want that committee to provide some direction. That could be one of the leading freeze projects next year. The other thing is the playground. I've at Heisey Park, I think all of us in this office have been kind of shook up about that, to be honest, because we worked really hard. We're real proud of it. It was a team effort, and it's pretty darn cool. And anyone who goes down there, any normally adjusted person, adolescent or adult that goes down there says, wow, this is really pretty cool. And every little kid thinks they're in an amusement park. It is outstanding. If you haven't been down there, you're cheating yourself. But anybody who's been down there has been struck in one way or another by the, unacceptable criminal behavior of what appeared to be a few dozen, maybe not even that many, teenagers. And I assume that I'm repeating myself from my maybe last week, that they're not driving a car, so it must be this 13 to 15-year-old group. And the destruction is we're just not going to accept it as the mayor's office and on your behalf. there's been in excess of $15,000 worth of damage down there. So I'll try this one more time. In the off chance that the parents of some of these, they're not vandals. These people are committing felonious acts. I'll try one more time. In the event that those parents or parent, bumps into this, like it's shared on Facebook, look what a creepy guy the mayor is. I hope it touches you, and I hope you understand we're not going to fool around about this. So every measure that you can imagine has been put in place. We've warned through this live stream. The police have been down there constantly, pretty constantly, trying to appeal to these kids whose language is kind of off the hook. I'm a profane person, and man, it makes my ears peel. It's just not right. And, maybe we put up with the language if it wasn't this destruction of property. So this world of lax rules, it's over. And so expect in a few days a new set of rules. Some will seem punitive. At this point I don't even care. But they're going to be in effect, and it will give the police a basis to make it safer and a more wholesome galleon kind of place to go, and not allow it to be overrun by a couple dozen. I hate to see it, but they might turn into lawless adults, and we got to do something about it. So Wednesday, we're going to be meeting with the school. I think our hope is the police department, the school, city government in general will find a way to reach out to some of the parent groups or some of the parents, and we can begin to form some sort of solution to keep an eye on things down there without generating a lot of police expense, because the police it's appropriate for them to be down there, but they got other things to do. I'd hope most everyone would agree with that. And so here's some basic rules to get used to. If you've been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Who hasn't been down to the park and saw 10, 11, 12-year-old ride their bike through that playground, not just on the sidewalk area, which I can kind of understand. I think kids this age think the sidewalk's where they ride the bike. Of course, older folks like myself, it's like, no, man, you ride on the street. Sidewalks for pedestrians. But anyways, the problem with that, if you haven't been down there, is that there are usually 5, 6, 7 little kids, toddlers, running around there. And one thing about a 10, 11-year-old on a bike, they aren't looking out for anyone else. And we're going to put a bike rack down there, and if you're riding your bike there, that will give a basis for the police to stop, identify you, contact your parents, and ban you from the park. The other thing that I'm sure will be a hit maker, everything you hear, it's all about election year. This may not be smart in a non-election year. But no more kids who are not accompanied by an adult. Yeah, I wish it wasn't that way. I've been down there. I spent a lot of hours observing before I, we put together this new set of rules. And almost every situation that I found embarrassing, as a galleon, I found embarrassing the behavior or the language. Every one of those times, they were these teenagers without parents. I think they have parents somewhere. Maybe they're out back, hanging out by the fire pit or something. But they're down there without adult supervision. And we all thought that would be all right, man. People would police themselves. Kids, it's just not working. So once again, that rule, police come down there, they observe, they see 1, 2, any number of kids that are down there as a group of kids, sort of like a pre-gang orientation, hanging out. It's nature. What is that called when teenagers start? Peer group thing, It's just not going to work, because some of these groups down there are almost in a sense terrorizing normal parents, grandparents, little kids. And you don't hear me use the word bully hardly ever, never on this live stream, I don't think. But this is bullying. Sometimes I have the opinion, it gets maybe carried away. This is bullying. It's gonna stop, and we'll stop it by, if you're down there, you don't have a parent. Once again, the police will call your parents. They will come and get you, and you're going to be banned from the park. I don't know how long at this point. We'll kind of see. We'll kind of see how the now dormant parents sit up and take notice. Once again, if they hear from their friends, it's like, uh-oh, don't you send your kid down there for hours at that place? Yeah. Well, not anymore. Just can't do it. $17,000 worth of damage, and I suspect it's just a small group of kids. So, very last thing, we'll get to questions. I'm real worked up about this. The last month, maybe. If you're doing that, we're going to nail you. We have a pretty good idea, we meaning the police and the detective bureau, when it's happening. We're narrowing it down. We're observing behavior out there. It looks like they are, whoever it is, maybe I'll eat my hat or whatever if it's not, but it appears to be people going through Heisey Park in and around the time kids report for school. So it's either adults kicking and pushing and breaking things up, including a bathroom. Now, come on. Tearing up the bathroom. Or it's kids, which I suspect, that are going there on the way to school and one showing off for the other, and it's, it escalates, and it's just, it's kind of funny, and I'll get off it after this. Those acoustical toys were put in there so as to make the park open, inclusive is the term that's used. And that means so that people who are autistic and who otherwise don't do well in those kind of playground settings, I understand that many of those children really enjoy that. So I really think that's the case, and I'm not going to let a bunch of unsupervised. I get it. Maybe they're angry. Maybe they have reason to be angry, but they don't have a reason to destroy our property. And so we're going to be very serious about that. Not only are we talking to the schools, but we're going to engage with the juvenile court system. We're going to really look at this from an enforcement situation. So if you think your job as a parent of a 13, 14-year-old is sit at the house and send them to the park, your job description changed. And you're going to have to get involved, or we're going to meet each other on the most difficult circumstances. So if you're a parent that's struggling with that, you got a kid kind of angry and violent and stuff, then as the school reaches out for parental input, don't sit on your hands. So everybody's on Facebook, man. We talk about everything under the sun, from too high electric rates to be fair to the homeless. I know some of these parents are listening to me, or they will be in the next few days. And I've tried to be nice and not fooling around. And so, bikes will be locked on a bike. If you're riding your bike there, boom, you're out of there. Parents will be called. If you're there unsupervised, you're not there without an adult anymore. End of the story. And so I hope, without going on too long, I hope I got enough people's attention. The other group, I hope, understand that this is not acceptable for Galion. We've got something in terms of a playground. I mean, it's just a playground, but it's something to be proud of. And we're going to do everything we can to protect it. Unfortunately, it'll probably include having some juvenile court encounters with some of these kids. So nobody can say they aren't warned. Follow the rules. We won't have a problem. Come down there with your parents. Put your bike, lock it in the bike rack. You can be there as much as you want. Come down there with a gang of your friends. Curse and swear, intimidate, damage, break the stuff. put the other adults in a position, well, they don't want to be the police. I kind of get it, Some people don't want to call the cops, but I applaud those that have. So we'll see how that goes. Get ready. The signs are being printed. I was told they're being fabricated. So they'll be up there pretty soon, and the rules, you'll have all the notice that you need. And instead of just sitting at the park, knowing certain behaviors going wrong, the police will be able to remove you for breaking the rules of the park. So, it's like a driver's license, like anything else, a privilege. You don't have a right to destroy public property. We're going to do what we can to make that clear in Galion. So, you know what, Matt, I could go on for another 20 minutes about this subject. It is that unnerving, but I'll stop and see if I've awoken some laid-back parents, and maybe somebody wants to challenge me. But here we go.
Okay.
You got questions?
Thank you, Mayor. We do
Yeah.
have a few tonight.
Okay.
First, I did want to start with one that's kind of an offshoot of what we were just discussing. This one came from Kara. She asked, there's been a lot of talk about militias or citizens patrolling the parks. Could you please speak to this
Yeah.
as an appropriate response?
Oh, it's totally inappropriate. Thank goodness, my wife has a Facebook account, and so she, without causing me to have another aneurysm or something, she lets me know what's out there. And you see some folks commenting that they're going to be down there with a weapon, and they'll take things into their own hands. Totally inappropriate. When I sit and observe, I don't sit and observe like with a professor, or what was it, Inspector Clouseau, some sort of costume. I'm incognito. And I sit down there. People know who I am. They can approach me. I've been keeping an eye out on that. Adults just sitting in park benches, just kind of hanging out. Certainly not a crime, but we want to make sure that there isn't a problem with that. If Kara wants me to comment, my comment is totally inappropriate. We're trying to stem the behavior of adolescents, kind of pre-adults from a legal point of view. And you read some of these comments from people who are adult, it looks like they didn't learn those lessons when they were kids. But, especially nervous, Kara, during these kind of crazy COVID times where everybody seems like they're just one perceived slight away from snapping. It reminds me a little bit of that movie Taxi Driver, for those people. Robert De Niro, you looking at me? People are just on edge, and so we don't need somebody who's kind of edgy sitting down there thinking they have to do the job of the police. Hey, there's other questions, I'm sure, but I met 3 really cool kids today. Gosh, I don't think any of them live in Galion, but they all live in the area, and those are the 3. They're not kids. I'm sorry. I apologize. They'll be soon able to arrest me. But we have 3 new officers, and I think that will help staffing. It'll help with getting a more regular police presence at the schools. I think that will help a little bit. I think it will help the police investigate who this is. One thing about folks that do something like that, they think it's pretty cool to break something. I'm sure they're tick-tocking their hearts away and showing off and bragging about it. So just keep talking about it among your friends. Just keep bragging about the damage you did, and we'll come and see you pretty soon. So anyways, yeah, it's not cool, and we're keeping an eye on it. The threats and the militia thing. I will have to say, something that's not a militia. There's some more questions? Okay, I'll make this quick. That Legion of Doom, those guys are cool. So, as we discuss who can patrol this, very much interested in talking to Grimlock and those guys and seeing if there's some hours that they can kind of hang out down there. They're not thugs. They're pretty cool. They're law and order, law-abiding guys that like to ride motorcycles. It's not. So they're real proud of Galion, and we're going to see if there's some way that we can involve them the kids that I've encountered down there that I've had a little bit of problem with, they just think nobody can say no to them. Nobody can tell them what to do, and maybe these motorcycle guys who are, a lot of them are ex-law enforcement, retired and whatnot. Maybe they can pierce through these knuckleheaded kids and appeal to them. So, anyways, no armed militia, but if you see the motorcycle guys down there, say hi and tell them thanks. All right, let's go. What's up? What else?
Okay. First question we had tonight came from Tom earlier. So, Tom,
Yeah.
thank you for your patience. He said, what about demolition of the commercial buildings east of the AMVETS? The roof has fallen in and most likely in unstable condition.
Yeah, stay off the overpass. I don't mean that in a dangerous way, but that's where I was on it this morning. I came into the office after that and said, yeah, the roof's getting even worse. The city is engaged in condemnation. We're working with the property owner, and if going to court is working, we're working with them. It's one of the worst buildings in town, and I'm not sure what the adjacent building to the west, kind of in between AMVETS and where you're talking about. Structurally, it looks okay, but I'd make the case that is a really good spot for redevelopment, Tom, and I don't want to flare up some anti-new grocery store in town types, but I think that'd be a good possible location to put a kind of hometown market grocery store there. Now the old timers will say, well, Perry Weaver, he moved from the Galleon Square Market out to what most people know as Charlie's, and that's true, but that was 40 years ago, and so yeah, that's I think a real valuable. I don't look at that piece of property as an eyesore or a pain. I see that as a really good redevelopment opportunity, and we're working to secure that, get it torn down, and see if it can have life after its current state. Good point.
Okay, thank you. And Dawn requested an update on a grocery store.
Yeah, well, there's not a whole lot new. There seems to be a little bit of a discussion within certain groups in the community that it boils down to either the free center or grocery store. And I said a few weeks ago, man, you can't. We got to be able to do both. So I still work on it. I don't want to say work on it every day. That'd be exaggerating. But the current state of affairs isn't working. I'll just add one little thing. I don't know where it will come from, but a developer did contact us who is working with the current grocery store in town about some renovation redevelopment opportunities. So we put that company in touch with the owners of the property out there, and I think that was Thursday or Friday. So we're gonna let that percolate for a while, and then I'll get back and see if this developer who's done a lot of investment in Galleon, what he found out there. So that's about the only thing, Dawn. It's moving a little bit, and it would move in the direction of a modernized, renovated Save-A-Lot, which would be a good thing. It's a good store. I'm not sure it works for everybody, particularly those people with limited mobility. Heck, that was a problem when Kroger's moved out there, 50 years ago, and they built that shopping center. It's that Kroger's and the Super X moved out there, and it pulled the everyday grocery store farther and further away from, the old center part of the city. All right. See you next week, Dawn. You're definitely, if we succeed, you're definitely invited to the ribbon cutting, whatever public acknowledgement, because you are a consistent force for getting something done there. So thanks.
Okay, and then Amber requested an update on the bike path.
Yeah, it is. It's coming along. It's a selfish thing. It's all about me tonight, man. Me. But I go out there on the weekends. It is the best tonic. I'll probably get jumped by all the mayor dislikers or haters, but Man, it's just so cool to go out there. You see people, all groups, peoples of all ages, dogs, no dogs, bikes, walking, and man, everybody has a smile on their face. So it doesn't happen very often that you get to be part of something that even before it gets officially open, there's just dozens and dozens of people thinking, "Wow, this is pretty cool." And when they recognize you and they say, "Oh, this is pretty cool," it inflates this pathetic little ego. But anyways, it's going real well. This is the week that they're going to finish up there's a little bit of regrading, getting it prepared for seeding, and the seeding and the straw and the seeding will happen, we hope, by the end of this week. So anyways, it's pretty neat. If you haven't been out there, it's probably somebody who's been out there. So it's open. We're beginning the early stages of figuring out where to go next, and then the last week or so we perhaps came up with an alternative that would be lower cost. And I think all of us who've been thinking about this for a few years worry about the safety of Hosford Road. It's real narrow, got a lot of curves. There's kind of some horizontal curves this way, and then there's some vertical curves, and I'm not sure it'll ever be the place for a lot of people on bikes or walking. So we're looking for another way to get to Biddle Road, and then another way to, still the plan would be to work with the township to get down to Amons. So we're working on that. That's what's going on, and the real engineered planning will likely be as we try to work our way from the Pizza Hut there at Hesby Drive on up in and around the school property and on up, we hope, ultimately to Pico. Ultimately, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the next generation of folks, they can take the bike path where they find it and do other good things with it. But it's practically open. To wind up that long answer, it's open now practically. So if you're hesitating because you're one of those real stringent rule followers, just go crazy once and go out there. You won't get in trouble. So that's what we got.
Okay, and then switching gears here, Molly had a question about the Free Center. Does it include a walking track?
No. The thing has grown and iterated, and as currently proposed and designed, the design that potential design build contractor architect partnerships are working on, it doesn't include a track. I've made my case so far unsuccessfully that if you don't have a track in there, I'm not sure what's in there for anybody over 40, except for those very fit people who continue to play basketball or volleyball, or I suppose at some point soccer or turf sports on past 40. And I think that's a problem, and so my hope is before any construction is started, that can be reconsidered, and that there can be some sort of, I've long given up the hope that there would be a competition track. Although it's kind of weird, like out of last year's class, they talk about this travel sports, and this is all about getting people ready to play. Gee, Matt, do you know the sports that the kids got Division I scholarships from? No, Tom, I don't know that. Yeah, it was track and cross country. So I don't know. But it seems to me we've had some outstanding athletes. There's a handful, not just the kids that graduated this year or didn't graduate this year, but there are other young men and women in collegiate sports, and what are they doing? They're running. So I don't get it. I made my case, and now thanks Molly, you gave me a chance to make my case through the live stream. So no, it doesn't include that track now, and I hope to be able to influence some of the final features of that as I continue to work with the Port Authority. But yeah, if somebody's not particularly good shape, or I think a lot about. We were talking about this a little bit today in the office, and somebody said, well, yeah, I know people that drive over to Richland Mall and, and walk all winter. I said, yeah, they're the only people over there anymore, aren't they? So thank God, I guess that's good for Richland Mall if there's walkers over there, but it's not good for the Free Center if there's not some sort of a permanent, easily delineated, not just thrown in as an afterthought because they got some pressure from different quarters. So yeah, sorry Molly, you're gonna have to walk outside in the cold. But the bike path's really good for walking. Maybe I'll put a dome over that, Matt. All right, that's enough fooling around with that. Anything else?
That is all I had for this evening.
Okay. Well, I would say that if you're interested in what's going on with the Free Center, I think that I certainly stay involved as I can, but you probably should going forward. We'll put this up on our Facebook site. The names. I won't put the addresses, phone numbers. That's not quite fair because you ask these people. I nominate people to the Port Authority Board, and then council approves them, and then you start publishing their name on the internet, name and phone number. What's that called when you do that? Docking someone. I don't want to dock the people on the local Port Authority, but if you need a contact to try to allow them to explain, because they've really been in charge of the design as it got to this most recent point. Maybe they're probably better suited. They're probably better suited to explain why a court was either not, from a programming point of view, important enough sounds too jerky, but that it costs too much to include the track, or it wouldn't get the kind of use, or would conflict with some other perceived priority use. But I'm on Molly's side on that one. I think making provisions for a walking track would be real valuable, and I think it would be astute in terms of gaining and maintaining community support. So we'll wind down and with that, and the last harsh, if you will, reminder is when you go through the park and you see that new sign. I'm really not big on rules, as many people know, but there's rules up there now, and so you've been fair warned. You ride your bike there, you're going to get dumped. You come down there without a parent, you're going to be sent home too. And when I think the peer people, the people who are losing something but aren't doing the demolishing, then let us know. I mean, I've seen it. You get a sense of who it is. There's 5 or 6 people. I don't want to parallel this, and I'll wind down quickly, with the kind of major felonious violence that's going on in a lot of cities. It's not the same sort of thing, except in a couple respects, and one's real important, that maybe there's 4 or 5 of these young people who are doing this destruction, but there's 15 or 20 or 30 that know who did it. And if you don't like having not to be able to go there, hang out, or just do what kids do, then you need to let people know who's destroying that property. And, it takes a certain amount of courage, and if you don't have the courage, then plan on not being down there without an adult. I remember being told if you're going to act like a child, you're going to be treated like a child. This behavior is unacceptable. So one good way to stop it is sort of rat on a friend for damaging your property. I'm going on and on. I'm really upset because I think it was a great improvement in our park system. But you ought to be upset. Everyone is listening, or will listen throughout the week. You ought to be upset. They're destroying your property. They're wasting freeze dollars. And so people out there, young people who know, parents who know, do something about it. You've got a video, there's a bunch of them floating around. The parents told cops, well, I've got pictures of these people on my phone. Well, really? Well, why don't you share that with somebody who will do something about it? So, anyways, fair warning, no bikes, no children, because you're acting like children, no minors unaccompanied by an adult, and we'll see you later. Look forward to the feedback. Good night.